Oh, pregnancy is amazing. It's the most beautiful, most magical time of your life, and you're never going to feel more beautiful. Hello. Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel probably most likely. This is my second YouTube video ever. I'm staring at myself up in the screen a lot, so I'm gonna go ahead and move this. That's probably really annoying. Second YouTube video of all time. So excited. I actually didn't really mind doing the first one, so I figured, what the heck, why not do a second one? My name's Elizabeth. Welcome. Really excited to have you here. My first video I'll link down below, but to give you a little bit more information about me and my channel. So my name is Elizabeth, like I said. I'm a mom of one little girl. Her name is Charlotte Marie. She is the love of my life. She's 14 months old, almost 15 months old. I am married to an amazing man. His name is Dan, and together we have this little tiny family of 3, and it's just the most amazing thing ever. I am a full-time working mom as well, so I go to work every day. I leave Charlotte here with a nanny most of the time, and then every other Friday, my mom and my husband's mom switch off watching her. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. For this one, I wanted to do really just things. I wanted this to be a really fun video. Things that you should never say to a pregnant woman. I have 8 of them. 8 things you should never say to a pregnant woman. This is just meant to be very fun, very lighthearted, and I mean, if you are somebody who knows someone who's pregnant, hopefully you can take some of this advice and not use these things when you're talking to your friend. But we'll just kind of get into it. So let me pull up my phone. I have them all written down here so I don't forget. Number 1. So before I even get into this, I'm prefacing this is going to be a very chatty video because I have a lot of opinions on all 8 of these things that I've written down. So number 1 on the list. Never tell a woman, oh, pregnancy is amazing. It's the most beautiful, most magical time of your life, and you're never going to feel more beautiful. If you have ever been pregnant, you probably feel the same way that I do, which is like, yes, pregnancy is amazing, and it is beautiful. It's the coolest, craziest experience of all time. But I think this is actually one of the things that made me dislike being pregnant the most, and I wish that I would have had a more realistic understanding of what to expect, because I think I would have been able to enjoy my pregnancy a little bit more. But I'm gonna tell you, it's not really all that great all the time. Your first trimester, you are so exhausted and just so not yourself. It's the farthest away from being something fun and beautiful and exciting as you can possibly get. If you've been pregnant, you understand the exhaustion that comes along with the first trimester, but it's like this weird wave of just feeling more exhausted than you've ever felt in your entire life, to the point where you just don't even feel like yourself. You feel like you're in this weird sort of fog for like 13 or 14 weeks. Like it's really not exciting. When I was pregnant, I think I wanna say I was like 7 or 8 weeks pregnant. My husband and I had already planned a trip to Santa Barbara. It was my first time that we were gonna be going to Santa Barbara. I had never been there before, and I was so excited about it. We had planned it like well before we had gotten pregnant, and so we just didn't even know that that was gonna be what was gonna be the case. And when we were in Santa Barbara, it wasn't even that I couldn't drink wine and experience that side of Santa Barbara. Like, you know, that's a really fun thing, and I do love wine. I love wine tastings and all of that. It was that I was so exhausted that I could really only handle being, like, doing things for like 2 hours at a time. And then I was so tired, I had to go back to our hotel and take a nap for like an hour or 2 hours. Like, it was just so debilitating being that exhausted. So yeah, I mean, and that's just your first trimester. But the other thing that people don't really talk about is, just dropped my drink. The other thing that people don't really talk about is that once you really look like you're pregnant, that usually happens around like 27 weeks or so. That's like the sweet spot. You've got a really nice little bump and you definitely look pregnant. You don't just look chubby, like you are definitely pregnant when people see you. But leading up to that, your body just looks really different from anything that you've ever experienced. And if you're anybody who has ever had any sort of body dysmorphic disorder or anything like that, which I think is pretty much 100% of women at the very least, it's really, really difficult to see your body change the way that it does when you're pregnant, especially at the beginning, because you have no control over it. I had the worst chub rub you've ever seen in your life. If you don't know what chub rub is, it's when your inner thighs just kind of chafe together when you walk and it hurts really bad. Like all of that happened when I was pregnant, and it was really, really difficult mentally for me to handle that. So that's definitely a big part of pregnancy, is just kind of seeing your body do things that you have no control over. And it's doing it for a great cause. It's doing it because it has to build another human being in your body. But it's difficult to, if you've always been really used to having full control over what your body does and how your body looks, it's difficult to lose that control. So that's another thing that's really challenging about that. The other thing about that, going into the third trimester, girl, the third trimester is just a hot mess. Like, first of all, you're really swollen everywhere. Second of all, that, at least for me, maybe not for everybody else, but at least for me, that was when like all of a sudden all this weight started adding on, and I was just like I haven't changed how I'm eating, I haven't changed anything, but all of a sudden I gained like, 5 pounds in a week. And so you are really uncomfortable. Your skin everywhere is just stretched to the max. You can't sleep. You can't even like get yourself up out of bed without like, I don't know, using all of your arm strength. It's just, the third trimester is definitely, I would say, the hardest, just because you're just so uncomfortable. So yeah, I mean, all of that to say, I wish that somebody would have set realistic expectations for me when I got pregnant. I actually think that having our next baby, because we know we do want to start trying sometime in the next several months for number 2, I actually think that the next time I get pregnant, I'm going to enjoy it much, much more, because I have very realistic expectations, which is why I put this as number 1 on my list of 8 things not to tell pregnant women, because I wish that someone would have told me like the God's honest truth before I got pregnant, instead of everybody being like, it's the most amazing thing, because it's not always. Like, and even for people who, are saying those things, even if you have a really hard time getting pregnant, or you've been trying for a really long time and it hasn't worked, and you're pregnant and it's just this miracle baby, like, you still have times when it sucks. And I think the thing that I struggle with the most about those situations is actually that I feel for those moms. I feel for those women who have had a really hard time getting pregnant, and finally they're pregnant. And so I feel like they almost feel like societally they have to only talk about how amazing their pregnancy is. They can't ever complain about anything, because they should just feel really, really grateful that they got pregnant in the first place, because it's been so hard for them. When in reality, it's a struggle for everyone. It's not something to take lightly. You're building another human being inside your body. And so I wish that we didn't have these weird stigmas, and I wish that we could talk more openly about the struggles and the challenges that we're going through, both mentally and physically, when we're pregnant, regardless of how we got to the point of being pregnant. Because we all love our babies when we have them, and we all are thankful and grateful for the experience of being able to carry those babies the entire time. But that doesn't mean that we have to pretend like everything is sunshine and roses for 10 months. And I say 10 months because it is 10 months. They say 9 months. It ain't 9 months. I was pregnant for a very, very long time, almost a year, and it's 10 months. Number 2, So actually, this wasn't even originally on my list, but I got this from other moms of things that they said were really annoying that people used to say to them when they were pregnant. You don't even look pregnant. I mean, I looked either fat or pregnant the entire time that I was pregnant. Like, leading up to actually having, you know, a very real baby bump and all of that, like, I basically just looked chubby. And I can say that when I would tell people that I was pregnant and they were like, oh my gosh, you look so great, you don't even look pregnant. In my head, I was just like, so that means that if I hadn't told you I was pregnant, you would just think that I look really fat and gross. So that's one side of the spectrum, but the other side of the spectrum, which is where I got this from in the first place from my other friends, is that I have a lot of really just very naturally thin friends. Like, they just, that's their genetics, like they are just very thin people. And it was really challenging, from what I've heard, for them to hear from people, you don't even look pregnant. And they were very self-conscious about that, because they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so thin. What if I'm not, you know, feeding my baby in the right way, or like giving my baby enough nutrients? And so it was a very taxing thing just mentally for them. So it's something that you should be really cognizant of on both sides. Like, you don't ever want anybody to think that you're just calling them like fat and gross and like, oh, if you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have even known you were pregnant. But you also want to make sure that for those people who are just naturally, genetically really thin, that can be really hurtful for them too. So just keep that in mind. Number 3, this is my favorite. Sleep now, you'll never sleep once the baby is here. Or, oh, you think you're tired now, just wait until the baby comes. Oh my God. I only ever got that from other women who had babies. And after I had my daughter, it like perplexed me even more than it did when I was getting it when I was pregnant. And the reason is because, again, if you've ever been pregnant, like, you understand the type of exhaustion that you feel when you're pregnant is like otherworldly. Like, it's different than any other sort of exhaustion you'll ever feel in any other normal context, including just being a parent and being really tired from being a parent. It's like just tired, right? But when you're pregnant and you're like building another person inside of you, it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like you're physically tired. Like, your body is like, it just like can't do the things that it normally does. Like, it's just a very, very different thing. So that's the first piece of that. The second piece of that is like, if somebody tells me, oh, you better sleep now because you're not going to be able to sleep when the baby gets here, it's like, I mean, wouldn't that be nice? You can't. You have a beach ball on the front of your body and you can barely even move without someone having to like roll you over. So what a nice thought. It's infuriating when people say that to pregnant women. I'm just like, every person that I've known who's pregnant since I was pregnant, that's the first thing I always tell them is like, don't listen to anybody who says sleep now because you're not going to be able to sleep when the baby sleeps. Like, I know how tired you are, just, I'm sorry. And that's it. Number 4, are you going to breastfeed? So, okay, I don't know any woman, not a single woman, who has been asked that question when they're pregnant and not responded with, yes, of course I want to breastfeed. Like, I don't know a single woman who chooses at the forefront to not breastfeed, right? Like, we all want to breastfeed. That's the most natural thing. We're making milk anyway, so we want to use it. So that's a totally like a no-brainer. Of course you're gonna want to breastfeed. It's a lot harder than you first imagine it's going to be, and there's a lot of pressure from society to be this perfect nursing mother and make sure that you're making the right amount of milk and that you're doing all of these things. And so that's a really, really just kind of sad question to ask, because you, most of the time in most situations, you as a woman can't control whether or not you're going to be able to breastfeed. You just can't. I could go into a full video on my breastfeeding experience and journey, and if you guys want to see that, comment down in the comments below. But I mean, I had a horrible experience with starting out breastfeeding, and it led me to exclusively pumping for 7 months to feed my daughter. And the only reason that I did it for 7 months to begin with was because I felt so much pressure from society to only give her breast milk that it felt like giving her formula was like giving her poison. Why even ask the question? Assume that every single woman that you talk to wants to do that with her whole heart. And if she ends up not doing it, it's probably not because she just decided, whatever, it's not that big of a deal, I'm not gonna do it. It's because like there are things that are out of her control that she just isn't able to. Fed is best. That's the one thing that I used to always remind myself when I stopped exclusively pumping, which is fed is best. And my daughter is healthy and happy. Anything that anybody chooses to do is the right choice for them and their family, and just know that and don't ask questions. Okay, let's see. Number 5. Okay, so this is a really personal one for me. Cocktail. This one is, I'm really worried about the health of your baby. Now, okay, sorry mom if you're watching this video, but this was from you, and I know that it was from a good place. A lot of times, especially in first pregnancies, but really in any pregnancy, you go through periods where you just get worried, because what else are you gonna do? You have this responsibility of growing a happy, healthy child inside of you, and anything that could possibly go wrong, you're constantly worried about. And there were times when I would share my like worries that I would have or something like that with the people that were closest to me. And the thing that I hated hearing was like, oh my gosh, I'm really worried. Now that you've said that, I'm so worried, you should go see the doctor. Yeah, no shit. Like, I'm already really worried. That's why I'm telling you this in the first place. And so now all that's happening is that I'm feeling like I'm a terrible parent and I need to worry even more, and it's just increasing my anxiety that much further. So, okay, number 6, how many kids do you want? That's a really funny one. So, if you would have asked me 10 years ago how many kids I wanted to have, I would have told you 4. I was like, 4, totally. I am an only child, so I wanted to have lots of kids and just have a full house and, you know, do like the complete opposite of how I grew up. And then I had my first. And actually, when she was a baby, like, it was totally fine. I think at like the 6-month mark, my husband and I were like, we could have another one. This is easy, it's fine. We could have 10 of these. And then she became a toddler. And yeah, I decided that I don't want 4 kids. So, don't ask people how many kids they want. You're asking that question, basically all you're doing is saying, I'm about to judge you, so tell me which way I should judge you. Number 7. Okay, so this is less of a don't say and more of a don't do. Don't touch a pregnant lady's belly without asking for permission. Ugh. When I was like, let's see, 22 or 23 weeks pregnant, we were actually moving out of our old place. It was a rental, and the woman was there kind of doing a final walkthrough with us, and I had never met her before in my life. She wasn't our landlord. She was an older lady, and she just like came out of nowhere and was just like, oh my God, you're pregnant! And it was terrifying, and I felt so violated because she just like went full speed ahead onto my belly. And I don't know, I mean, like, when you're pregnant, like, your belly starts at your boobs and it ends at like your, you know, nether regions. Like, it's the whole thing. So depending on where people put their hands, that's borderline like sexual harassment. Like, it's weird. It was definitely enough for me to say, don't ever just assume that somebody wants you to touch their belly. It's really weird. Just don't do it. And then number 8, and this one is specifically for women. I don't think men get this question ever. And this is just our society and just how things are. But number 8 is, so are you gonna quit your job so you can stay home with the baby? Here's why I feel so strongly about that one. After I had my baby, I got to stay home with her for the first 4 months. I'm really lucky. The company that I work for has an amazing maternity leave policy. So I got to stay home with her. I didn't have to worry about anything. And throughout that entire time, I felt so torn about whether I should stay home with her or go back to work and what ultimately was gonna be the best choice, because in either scenario, I was compromising something. So if I chose to stay home with her full time, I was compromising really a lot of my own personal identity. I was gonna have to, we'd be a single income family, so I was going to have to rely on the income of my husband and ask him for permission if I wanted to spend money on something for myself. A lot of those things, which was really antithetical to how I had been raised. Like, I was always raised to make my own money, be able to support myself so that no matter what happened in life, I would always be able to be independent and I wouldn't have to rely on anyone. The other side of it was choosing to go back to work ultimately meant not spending 100% of my time with my child, which was a really, really, really hard decision for me. And for anybody else who's a working mom out there, I'm sure you agree, like, it's still a really hard choice for me every single day. Ultimately, I did decide to go back to work because I felt like it was gonna be the best thing for my own personal sanity and to keep my own identity. But it's still challenging. Every single day when I leave for work and I leave Charlotte at home with our nanny, I feel guilty and I feel like I'm missing out on, you know, the most important parts of her life as a child. And that's never gotten easier, and it's been almost 15 months. So I just think that in terms of those questions, like, one of the things to remember is that when a woman is pregnant or when she's just had her child or anything like that, she's already questioning, she's already asking all of these questions to herself and most likely struggling with the answers. And so having somebody else ask you those questions, it just doesn't feel good. So that's it. Those are my 8 things to never say or do to a pregnant woman. I hope that gives you a little bit of insight. Women can only succeed in the world with the support of other women. So I'm a huge, like, she power kind of person. That's it for today. If you liked this video, if you got something out of it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new, which is pretty much everyone because this is only my 2nd video. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye guys.